Anticipate. Keep it going. We're going to sit on it for a second. 5-seat pocock. Nice. Into, we take a 10. I want 4 seats on them. That's 1 and 2 right here. 1, bust the ball. 2, anticipate. 3, 4, they're challenging. 5, moving through them. 6, 7, 4-seat. 8, 9, give me that seat. 10, now don't sit.
The biggest danger of the sport is that it takes place on a surface that is deadly by definition for humans. Because it's far easier to drown than it is if you're running and you trip over a curb. So your training surface is a risky one. If you bicycled backwards in traffic, that'd probably be more dangerous than rowing. But the going backwards part of rowing is not the most dangerous part. It's really important to be able to swim. I mean, the ability to swim doesn't guarantee that you'll be just fine if you go into 40-degree water without wearing a life jacket, which rowers don't wear life jackets. Rowers don't wear life jackets because a life jacket's just not really compatible with the kind of effort, physical exertion that's going on. Life jackets are bulky, they get in the way. I've had some run-ins with the Coast Guard about some language that exempts racing shells from life jacket requirements. I tried to quote that to a Coast Guard officer once because we'd flipped a boat in town in March and the water was cold, and a helpful passing motorist on I-5 called it in to 911. And by the time the Coast Guard arrived at the dock, rowers were wet and cold, but fine. They roared up, lights ablazing. The guy who was clearly agitated and amped up said, where are the life jackets? I said, well, they don't have any. They don't have to. Racing shells are exempt. He says, were you racing? And I said, no, we were practicing. He says, well, they're not racing shells then. And I didn't want to get into a debate with him about parts of the English language. We sort of agreed to disagree, and that was the end of it.
Young Johnny Jones, he had a cute little boat, and all the girlies he would take for a float.
What happens when you catch a crab in rowing is that your oar gets stuck underwater. So if you don't take your oar out of the water at the same time as everyone else, the boat continues to move, and so your oar is stuck in the water. And so the handle can move up over your head, the oar can make a noise, the boat comes to almost a complete stop. When I was coaching in college, I had a rower get ejected from the boat because the oar handle didn't go over their head, it came into their torso. The force of the boat going forward was more than one person could stop, and so it just lifted her out of the boat and into the water. And a week later it happened again, although we all claimed that she actually had hang time with that one, and she didn't quit. And she kept coming back. He was a little tentative for a few days.
Sweet, and he knew just how to row. He was a rowing Romeo.
The Snorkel Award, I think, was probably invented because we had a boat that went underwater at the finish. Rowers and coxswain had to be extracted from the boat and taken over to the shore. It was at the end of a race where the winds changed dramatically in the last 500 meters of the race course. The prize itself was a green toy snorkel intended for a child. You have to have a sense of humor about the risks. I don't have a very good sense of humor about the risks. I mean, I joke about it with my rowers. If we're out in the dark and I haven't been giving them very much attention to helping them improve that day, I'll remind them that I'm mostly out there to make sure they don't die.
A row, way up the river he...
Rowing on the Willamette River is different than rowing on a lake. We still get a lot of barge traffic and tug traffic. The Portland Spirit, we have various commercial craft, and they all have the right-of-way by federal law, and they're large, and they can't stop on a dime. You don't want to be very near them when they go by. And so one of my jobs when we go down toward Swan Island, toward the Port of Portland, is to look at the 100 or 150 lights on the horizon and figure out which ones don't belong, which ones I don't remember as being there, and by color and by size and whether I see them moving or not. And so I have to glance up every minute or two to see if the horizon is changing and if something's coming.
And then he'd row, row, row. Way up the river he would row, row.
20 years ago, a single sculler was in Holgate Channel above the Ross Island Bridge. And Ross Island Sand and Gravel runs barges. When they're really loaded, the barges are quite low in the water, big hills of sand and gravel. And so the operator of the tug really can't see around the front. And sometimes they have a person out on the front with a walkie-talkie. Sometimes they don't. They can't see for maybe 500 feet in front of them easily. She was rowing a single. The wind was going with her, and so she didn't hear any sound coming at her. And all of a sudden there was a noise, and she looked down to either side of her, and there was sand next to her on both sides of her single. And so she stood up, and she was on the front of a moving barge that had gone right underneath her. It was so heavily loaded with sand that the bow was almost going underwater. And so she was picked up right onto the front, half of her boat up onto this pile of sand. So she got up and scampered up to the top of the pile of sand and waved her hands at the tugboat operator, who then probably had a minor heart attack before stopping. She got back in her boat and slid it off the front and continued on her row. I saw the scratches. There were only 3 or 4 scratches on the hull of the boat from where it had gone up on the pile of sand. Obviously, if the barge had been loaded a little bit less and had been a little more, death is a certain possibility in that situation.
A little further he would row. Oh, oh, oh. Then he'd drop.
There's the theory of the perfect stroke, but it's not like baseball. In baseball, you can throw a perfect game. There's like 27 up, 27 down. I don't think the rowers like it, but I can compare it to golf, because in golf, you can't get a perfect score. You could always be a little bit better. It's the same in rowing. That desire to get together into a group of like-minded people who enjoy each other's company, who work toward a common goal. It's a very human thing to want to do. So I think it is attractive that way. The danger side, I actually think a lot of them overlook that once they get into the sport. They probably don't think about it that often anymore. I think about it a lot because I feel responsible for their safety. For the people that it sticks with, they enjoy the camaraderie. They have a hard time finding another sport that'll replace that. So, it requires, in a way, unselfishness, in a way, awareness of everybody around you. You're having to work together so completely. To be able to accomplish that in an individualistic world is quite a rush. It's not about being perfect. It's about knowing that there's always work to be done. For a team boat to go fast, the people have to be their heartbeats almost have to be aligned. We had a group that went out on Saturday, and they think their best row of the entire year. And they were very excited because they knew that in that pursuit of perfection, we were closer to it for this hour and a half than we've been in a year. And who knows when the next moment will come. So you really enjoy it.
He'd fool around, and then they'd kiss again, and then he'd row, a row, a row. A little further he would row. Oh, 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 oh. Then he'd drop both his oars, take a few more on